My sister took Mom's ring without asking, now she swears it won't come off her hand. I walked into the living room and froze. There was Sophie, my younger sister, standing by the window with her hand raised to catch the afternoon light. On her finger sparkled our late mother's diamond ring, the one Mom had specifically promised to me before she died 3 months ago. "Sophie, what are you doing?" My voice came out sharper than I intended. She spun around, her face lighting up with that familiar mischievous smile. "Oh, come on, Natalie. I just wanted to try it on. It's so beautiful, and you keep it locked away like some museum piece. Take it off. Now." I stepped closer, my heart pounding. That ring meant everything to me. Mom had held my hand on her deathbed and whispered that it was mine, that I should keep it safe. Sophie laughed, a tinkling sound that usually charmed everyone. "Relax, I'll give it back in a..." Her smile faltered. She tugged at the ring. Then tugged harder. "Wait. It's stuck." I watched as her amusement dissolved into confusion, then worry. She pulled and twisted, her face reddening with effort. The ring wouldn't budge even a millimeter. My shock turned to an eerie silence as Sophie's panic filled the air. Then she screamed, a raw, terrified sound that made my blood run cold. "It's burning. Natalie, it's burning my finger." Hi, I'm Natalie, and this is the story of how my mother's ring revealed secrets that would tear my family apart. If you want to know what happens next, please subscribe. I grabbed Sophie's wrist and dragged her to the kitchen sink. "Cold water, now." I cranked the faucet, and she thrust her hand under the stream, gasping and crying. "What did you do to it?" she accused between sobs. "Did you curse it or something? Are you insane?" "I didn't do anything." But even as I said it, I stared at her finger. Around the ring, her skin had turned an angry dark red, almost like she'd been branded. The mark was perfect, circular, and somehow looked deliberate. Sophie pulled her hand from the water, examining the burn with wide eyes. "This isn't normal, Natalie. Rings don't just burn people." Before I could respond, I heard the front door open. "Hello? What's all the screaming about?" My brother Daniel's voice carried from the hallway. He appeared in the kitchen doorway, still in his work clothes, his messenger bag slung over one shoulder. His eyes moved from Sophie's tear-stained face to her hand, which she was now cradling against her chest. "She did something to Mom's ring." Sophie blurted out before I could speak. "She tampered with it, and now look." She thrust her hand toward him, displaying the burn mark and the ring that glinted mockingly in the kitchen light. Daniel's expression shifted from confusion to concern. "Natalie? I didn't do anything." My voice rose in frustration. "She took the ring without permission, and now she's blaming me because it won't come off." Sophie's eyes narrowed dangerously. "If this doesn't come off by tomorrow, I'm calling the police. This is tampering with Mom's jewelry, maybe even assault." 3 days later, we sat in the law office of Mrs. Patricia Holloway, Mom's attorney. The room smelled of old books and lemon polish. Sophie sat across from me, her hand wrapped in a white bandage. The burn hadn't healed, and the ring remained firmly in place. Mrs. Holloway, a woman in her 60s with silver hair pulled into a neat bun, adjusted her reading glasses and opened a folder. "Thank you all for coming. I know this is a difficult time, but we need to review Evelyn's will." She began reading in a clear, practiced voice. Most of it was straightforward. The house would be divided among the three of us, savings accounts split equally, personal items distributed according to a detailed list. Then she reached the section about jewelry. "To my daughter Natalie, I leave my diamond engagement ring, the one my mother gave me. This ring has been in our family for 3 generations. Only she may wear it." Mrs. Holloway looked up, her gaze settling on Sophie's bandaged hand. "That's an unusual specification." Sophie's face drained of color. I watched her sink lower in her chair, and for just a moment, I felt a flash of vindication mixed with worry. Mom had been clear. The ring was mine. Daniel leaned forward. "Only Natalie may wear it? Mom actually wrote that?" Mrs. Holloway nodded, then reached into the folder again. There's also this. She pulled out a sealed envelope, my name written across it in Mom's distinctive handwriting. Evelyn left specific instructions that this be given only to Natalie, to be opened in private. That night, I locked myself in my bedroom and stared at the envelope. Mom's handwriting blurred as tears filled my eyes. I missed her so much, her laugh, her advice, the way she always knew how to make things better. With trembling fingers, I broke the seal and unfolded the letter. My dearest Natalie. If you're reading this, I'm gone, and I pray you're doing okay. I need to tell you about the ring. It's not just a family heirloom, sweetheart. It carries something deeper, a truth I discovered when my own mother gave it to me. If anyone else wears the ring, it will reveal what they hide. It won't harm them physically, but it will make their secrets visible to those who know how to look. I wore it once when I suspected your father of keeping things from me. The ring showed me the truth, painful as it was. I'm leaving it to you because you have the strongest heart. You'll know what to do if someone tries to claim what isn't theirs. Watch carefully, and you'll see what I mean. All my love, Mom. I read it 3 times, my hands shaking. Reveal what they hide? I thought about Sophie's burn mark, her panic. Then I remembered something, earlier tonight, when Sophie had insisted she'd been at the library studying, I'd noticed something strange. A faint shimmer under the bandage on her hand, like light glowing beneath her skin. I'd dismissed it as a trick of the lamp. But now, I crept down the hallway to Sophie's room and pressed my ear against the door. She was on the phone with someone, her voice hushed and urgent. I told you, I can't meet up anymore. This thing won't come off. No, I don't care what you think. Everything's falling apart. The glow. I had to see if it was real. I knocked softly and pushed the door open without waiting for an answer. Sophie jumped, spinning to face me with the phone pressed to her chest. What do you want? I stared at her hand. The bandage was partially unwound, and there it was, a faint, pulsing glow emanating from beneath her skin around the ring, intensifying with each beat of her heart. Where were you really last night? I asked quietly, unable to tear my eyes from that eerie light. Sophie's face hardened. I told you. The library. The glow flared violently, bright enough to cast shadows on the wall. Sophie gasped and looked down at her hand, watching in horror as the light pulsed through her veins like liquid fire. What the heck? She ran to her bathroom mirror, and I followed, morbidly fascinated. In the fluorescent lighting, the effect was even more dramatic. Threads of golden light traced up her arm from the ring, branching like a tree's roots beneath her skin. Make it stop. She turned to me, her eyes wild with fear. Natalie, please. What is this thing? I thought about Mom's letter, about truth revealing itself. Tell me where you really were. I was at the library. The light blazed brighter, and Sophie screamed. She grabbed at the ring with her other hand, pulling so hard I thought she might dislocate her finger. Get it off. Get it off me. Daniel burst through the door, alarmed by the screaming. He froze when he saw the glow. What in the world? Sophie was sobbing now, hysterical. It won't stop. Every time I try to explain, it gets worse. She ran to her nightstand and yanked open the drawer, pulling out a pair of scissors. I'll cut it off. I swear I'll cut the whole finger off if I have to. I grabbed her wrist before she could do anything reckless. Sophie, stop. You're not thinking clearly. Then help me, she shrieked. Do something. You're the one Mom gave it to, you must know how to control it. But I didn't. I was just as terrified as she was, watching my sister unravel before my eyes. The next morning, our Aunt Beatrice arrived unannounced. She'd heard from Daniel about the situation with the ring, and her face was grave as she stood in our doorway with her overnight bag. Where is she? Beatrice asked, not bothering with pleasantries. I led her to Sophie's room, where my sister sat on the bed, staring blankly at her hand. The glow had dimmed to a subtle shimmer, but it was still visible in the shadowy room. Beatrice sat beside Sophie and gently took her hand, examining the ring without touching it. Evelyn told me about this ring years ago. I didn't believe her then. She looked up at Sophie with sad eyes. The ring isn't cursed, child. It carries your grandmother's gift, an energy of truth. Truth? Sophie's voice cracked. What does that even mean? It means, Beatrice said softly, that the ring responds to deception. It makes visible what someone tries to hide. Your mother inherited this gift from her mother, and she embedded it into the ring before she died. I felt a chill run down my spine. Mom did this on purpose? She did it to protect her children. To protect the truth. Beatrice stood and turned to face me. But Sophie needs to understand something important. If she keeps resisting what the ring is trying to reveal, it might take more than just her secrets. Sophie's head snapped up. What do you mean, take more? Beatrice didn't answer directly. She just squeezed Sophie's shoulder and left the room, leaving behind a warning that hung in the air like smoke. That night, Sophie woke me up, crying. Natalie, I can't feel my hand. From the wrist down, it's completely numb. The next 48 hours were chaos. Sophie tried everything, butter, dish soap, ice, even industrial-strength lubricant from Daniel's toolbox. Nothing worked. The ring seemed to tighten when she pulled at it, as if it were alive and refusing to let go. Daniel, always the pragmatist, started documenting everything with his phone. Someone needs to have proof of this, he muttered, filming Sophie's failed attempts with pliers to grip the ring's edge. Otherwise, they'll think we're all losing our minds. I appreciated his logic, even as I watched my sister's desperation grow. She was barely eating, barely sleeping. Dark circles had formed under her eyes, and she jumped at every sound. On the third day, as I brought her tea, Sophie looked at me with something close to hatred. You did this. Admit it. You've always been jealous that Mom loved me more, and now you've put some kind of witchcraft on this ring. That's ridiculous. I shot back, hurt by the accusation. But Beatrice, who'd been staying with us, spoke from the doorway. Maybe she's not entirely wrong. We both turned to stare at her. Not about jealousy or witchcraft, Beatrice clarified. But about power. Natalie, your mother left you that ring knowing you'd be the one to wield its truth. In a way, you do have control here, you can help Sophie, or you can let the ring run its course. I don't know how to help her. My voice broke with frustration. I don't understand any of this. Beatrice's expression softened. Then perhaps it's time you started asking the right questions. Like why Sophie is really so afraid of what the ring might reveal. That night, I dreamed of Mom. She stood at the foot of my bed, looking exactly as she had before the cancer stole her vitality, strong, beautiful, with that knowing smile she always wore when she'd figured out something before anyone else. Truth restores peace, Natalie, she whispered. Don't be afraid of it. I tried to speak, to ask her what I should do, but no words came out. She began to fade, her form becoming translucent in the moonlight streaming through my window. Mom, wait. I finally managed to call out. But she was gone. I woke with tears on my cheeks and my heart aching with loss. The clock on my nightstand read 3:47 a.m. I turned on my lamp and looked around my room, trying to shake off the dream's lingering sadness. That's when I noticed it, the family photograph on my dresser, the one taken last Christmas with all of us smiling around the tree. The glass was cracked. A single fracture ran diagonally across the frame, splitting the image perfectly through Sophie's face. I hadn't touched that picture in weeks. The crack hadn't been there yesterday. My hands trembled as I picked up the frame, running my finger along the break. It was clean, precise, as if someone had scored it deliberately. But that was impossible. Morning came too quickly. I was making coffee when I heard Sophie's door open and her footsteps on the stairs. She appeared in the kitchen doorway, and I gasped. Her hand, the one wearing the ring, was grotesquely swollen. Her finger had ballooned to twice its normal size, purple and angry looking. The ring was now embedded in the swollen flesh, barely visible. Hospital, I said immediately. Now. The emergency room was busy, but one look at Sophie's hand got us seen quickly. The attending physician, Dr. Hammond, examined the swelling with growing concern. How long has it been like this? He asked, probing gently around the ring. It got really bad overnight, Sophie managed through gritted teeth. But the ring's been stuck for almost a week. Dr. Hammond called for a ring cutter, a small tool designed specifically for removing stuck jewelry. But when the nurse tried to position it around the band, the metal wouldn't catch. It slipped off as if the ring were coated in oil. That's odd, the doctor muttered. He tried himself, with the same result. Let's try cutting through it with the orthopedic tools. They brought in a stronger cutter, one typically used for removing casts or metal splints. The moment it touched the ring, the overhead lights flickered. Then the monitors began beeping erratically. What's happening? Dr. Hammond looked around, confused. He tried again, and this time, sparks flew from the cutter. The nurse who was assisting stumbled backward. I've never seen, she didn't finish her sentence. Her eyes rolled back, and she collapsed. Chaos erupted. Other medical staff rushed in to help the fallen nurse, while Dr. Hammond stared at Sophie's hand with an expression I can only describe as fear. I need to consult with someone, he said, backing away. Don't touch anything. He left the room quickly, and I heard him on the phone in the hallway, his voice urgent and confused. When he returned, his professional composure had cracked. Miss Hayes, I don't know how to tell you this, but the ring isn't reading as metal on our scanners. The composition keeps changing. It's as if it's alive. Back home, Sophie locked herself in the bathroom. I could hear her crying, sometimes screaming at the ring, begging it to release her. Daniel and I took turns sitting outside the door, making sure she didn't hurt herself. On the second day, I couldn't take it anymore. I knocked firmly. Sophie, please. Let me in. Go away. I can't. Not until you tell me what you're hiding. I pressed my palm against the door. Mom's letter said the ring reveals secrets. Maybe if you just tell the truth, it'll stop. Silence. Then, slowly, the lock clicked. The door opened a crack, and Sophie's hollow eyes met mine. You want the truth? Her voice was hoarse from crying. Fine. I pawned Mom's gold bracelet. The one Grandma gave her. I needed money, and I took it to a pawn shop 2 months before Mom died. I felt like I'd been punched. You what? I told everyone it got lost in the move to the hospice. But I sold it. I needed the money for... She trailed off, looking at her hand. I watched as the glow around the ring dimmed slightly. The swelling seemed to decrease a fraction. So it did respond to truth. Keep going, I urged. What did you need the money for? Sophie's face crumpled. For gambling debts. I got in over my head with online betting, and the people I owed weren't patient. I was desperate. The glow faded more, and Sophie gasped as feeling seemed to return to her fingers. She flexed them experimentally, hope blooming on her face. But then the glow surged back, brighter than before. Sophie screamed. There's more, I realized, my stomach sinking. There's something worse, isn't there? Sophie slid down to the bathroom floor, sobbing uncontrollably. Yes. I spent the next day searching through Mom's papers while Sophie slept, exhausted from her confession. I wasn't sure what I was looking for until I found Mom's bank statements in a folder in her desk. There, highlighted in yellow from months ago, were transfers to Sophie's account. $500 here, $1,000 there, sometimes more. They'd been going on for months before Mom died, and the amounts were significant. My hands shook as I added them up. $15,000. Sophie had taken $15,000 from our dying mother. Daniel found me sitting at the desk, staring at the statements in disbelief. What's wrong? I showed him. I watched his face go through the same journey mine had, confusion, realization, anger. She stole from Mom? His voice was barely above a whisper. While Mom was dying? I need to know if she forged the signatures, I said, my voice mechanical. Can you check? Daniel took the statements to his computer and spent an hour comparing them to other documents with Mom's signature. When he came back to find me, his face was grim. They're forged. Not all of them, but enough. The ones where Mom was probably too weak to sign herself. He pulled up images on his laptop, showing me the differences. See how the pressure changes here? And the tremor in these letters? That's not how Mom signed her name, even when she was sick. I felt physically ill. Sophie hadn't just taken advantage of Mom's generosity. She'd actively stolen from her, forging her signature to drain her accounts. That night, I confronted Sophie with the evidence. She didn't even try to deny it. I didn't mean for it to go that far, she whispered, staring at the bank statements. It started small. Mom offered to help with my debts, and I took more than she knew about. Then I couldn't stop. Sophie deteriorated rapidly after that. She stopped coming out of her room except to use the bathroom. Through the door, I could hear her talking to herself, or rather, talking to someone who wasn't there. I'm sorry, Mom. I'm so sorry. Please, I didn't mean to hurt you. Then silence, as if she were listening to a response. I know I was wrong. Please, just make it stop. Daniel and I exchanged worried looks. She's hallucinating, he said quietly. The stress and guilt are breaking her down. Beatrice had gone back home, but I called her, desperate for guidance. What do we do? She's losing her mind. The ring is forcing her to confront what she's done, Beatrice said calmly. This is part of the process. She has to face it all, Natalie. Every lie, every theft, every moment of betrayal. Only then will the ring release her. But what if it kills her first? I demanded. She's not eating, she's not sleeping. She's talking to people who aren't there. Then you need to help her face the truth faster, Beatrice replied. Find out what the worst of it is. There's still something she hasn't confessed. That night, I heard Sophie screaming. Not in pain, but in pure terror. I ran to her room and found the door locked from the inside. Sophie. Open the door. She's here. Sophie shrieked. Mom's here. She won't leave me alone. I threw my shoulder against the door. Once, twice. On the third impact, it burst open. The room was empty. Sophie's window was wide open, curtains billowing in the night breeze. Her phone lay on the bed, still warm. But Sophie was gone. The police arrived within 20 minutes. Officer Chen took our statements while his partner organized a search. They found Sophie's car within an hour, abandoned near Willow Lake, the place where we'd scattered Mom's ashes 3 months ago. I stood on the shore in the cold night air, watching flashlight beams dance across the water. This couldn't be happening. Not Sophie. Not like this. My phone rang at 2 a.m. Unknown number. My heart stopped as I answered. Hello? Sobbing. Ragged breathing. Then Sophie's voice, barely recognizable, Natalie? Sophie. Where are you? Are you okay? I can't get away from her. Her teeth were chattering. Mom won't let me go. She's everywhere. In the water, in the trees, in the wind. She knows what I did. What you did. Sophie, what are you talking about? But even as I asked, a terrible suspicion was forming in my mind. The lake is so cold, Sophie whispered. Maybe if I go in, maybe she'll forgive me then. Sophie, no. Don't you dare. A splash. The sound of water. Then the line went dead. I screamed for the police, pointing toward the lake. She's in the water. She just went in. The divers who'd been standing by immediately suited up and entered the lake. The longest 15 minutes of my life passed as I stood there, Daniel's arm around my shoulders, both of us frozen with fear. Finally, movement in the water. The divers emerged, supporting a limp figure between them. Sophie. They pulled her onto the shore, and she was alive, conscious, shaking violently from cold and shock. As the paramedics wrapped her in thermal blankets, Sophie looked up at me with wild eyes. I saw her down there. In the water. Mom was down there, and she showed me everything. At the hospital, they treated Sophie for hypothermia and psychological shock. I sat beside her bed, watching her sleep fitfully, muttering in her dreams. The ring was still on her finger, but something had changed. When Sophie woke, she seemed different, calmer, but also broken in a way that made my heart ache. "The ring's loose," she said hoarsely, holding up her hand. The swelling had gone down significantly, and indeed, the band now moved freely around her finger. She could have taken it off with a simple tug. "Then take it off," I urged. But Sophie shook her head slowly. "Not yet. I'm not done. There's still one more thing I need to face." Daniel arrived with coffee and clean clothes. "You're not making sense, Sophie. If it's loose, just remove it and end this nightmare." "You don't understand." Sophie's eyes filled with tears. "The ring isn't punishing me. It's giving me a chance. A chance to finally tell the truth about everything. And I'm not ready to waste that chance by running away again." Over the next 2 days, Sophie remained in the hospital for observation. Beatrice visited, bringing flowers and sitting quietly beside the bed. She didn't ask questions, didn't demand explanations. She just waited. On the 3rd day, Sophie called a family meeting in her hospital room. Daniel and I sat on one side, Beatrice on the other, all of us tense with anticipation. "I need to tell you something," Sophie began, her voice steady but her hands trembling. "About the night Mom died." My breath caught. This was it, the secret at the heart of everything. Before Sophie could continue, Beatrice held up her hand. "Wait. Before you confess, there's something you all need to know about the ring." We turned to her, surprised by the interruption. "Evelyn told me the full story once, years ago. She inherited the ring from her mother, your grandmother. But its power goes back further than that." Beatrice settled into her chair, her expression distant with memory. "Your great-grandmother wore it when she discovered her husband was cheating on her. The ring showed her the truth in a dream, visions of his betrayal. So it's been passed down through the women in our family?" I asked. "Yes. And each time, it's chosen someone who needed to see the truth. When Evelyn wore it, she discovered your father had been hiding financial problems from her. It nearly destroyed their marriage, but ultimately, the truth saved them. They worked through it together." "But why Sophie?" Daniel asked. "If the ring was meant for Natalie, why did it react so strongly when Sophie put it on?" Beatrice looked at Sophie with surprising gentleness. "Because the ring doesn't just reveal truth, it chooses who needs it most. When Sophie put it on, the ring recognized someone drowning in lies and guilt. It's not trying to destroy her. It's trying to save her by forcing her to face what she's done." Sophie's eyes glistened with tears. "But for what reason? What am I supposed to learn that's worth all this suffering?" "That's for you to discover," Beatrice said softly. "But I believe you're close now. So tell them. Tell them what happened the night your mother died." 6 months later, on a sunny afternoon in May, Daniel proposed to me at the botanical gardens. He got down on one knee beside the rose bushes, Mom's favorite flowers, and asked me to marry him. I said yes, through tears of joy. For the first time since Mom's death, I felt genuine happiness, untainted by grief or family drama. The engagement dinner was held at Daniel's apartment, simple but warm. Sophie came too. She'd been living in a small studio across town, attending therapy twice a week and working part-time at a bookstore. The ring had come off months ago, but she still bore a faint scar around her finger, a permanent reminder. She brought flowers and congratulated both of us with what seemed like genuine warmth. We were rebuilding our relationship slowly, carefully, like two people learning to walk on newly healed legs. I was cutting the celebration cake when Sophie suddenly gasped and pressed her hand to her chest. The color drained from her face. "Sophie?" I moved toward her, alarmed. She stumbled, catching herself on the back of a chair. "I'm okay, I'm just..." Then she collapsed. I dropped to my knees beside her as Daniel called 911. Sophie's eyes were open but unfocused, and her breathing came in short, panicked gasps. I grabbed her hand to comfort her, and that's when I felt it. Heat. Intense heat radiating from her ring finger, the one that used to wear Mom's ring. As I stared, unable to look away, the faint scar around her finger began to glow. The same golden light from before, pulsing with that familiar rhythm. And then I heard it. Not with my ears, but somehow in my mind. Mom's voice, clear as a bell, "She still lies." That night, Sophie slept on our couch. She'd refused to go to the hospital, insisting she was fine, that it was just stress. But I knew better. Something was happening again. I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about that voice, about the way the scar had glowed. Around 3 a.m., I heard sounds from the living room, Sophie talking in her sleep. I crept down the hallway and paused at the doorway, listening. "I didn't mean to," Sophie mumbled, her voice thick with sleep and distress. "I didn't know it would. I gave her the wrong pills. I gave her the wrong ones." My blood turned to ice. Sophie thrashed on the couch, tears streaming down her face even in sleep. I was so tired. I took the morphine to sell it. I replaced it with sleeping pills. I thought they were the same, that she wouldn't. But she needed the real ones. She was in so much pain, and I gave her the wrong ones. I couldn't breathe. Couldn't move. The room spun around me as the full horror of what I was hearing sank in. "I'm sorry, Mom. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean for you to suffer. I just needed the money. The pills were worth so much, and you were dying anyway. I thought. She woke up with a scream, sitting bolt upright, her eyes wild. She saw me in the doorway and froze. "How long have you been standing there?" she whispered. "Long enough." Sophie's face crumbled. "Natalie, You stole Mom's pain medication?" My voice didn't sound like my own. It was cold, distant, coming from somewhere outside my body. While she was dying of cancer. And replaced it with something else? I didn't think it would matter. The doctors said she only had days left anyway, and I owed people money. Dangerous people. The words tumbled out in a rush, desperate and pathetic. I was going to pay it back. I was going to make it right. But then she got worse so fast, and the guilt. I backed away from her, physically revolted. "Get out. Natalie, please. Get out of my house. Now." 3 days of silence passed. Sophie called repeatedly, sent texts, left voicemails that I deleted without listening to. Daniel wanted to go to the police, but I stopped him. I needed time to process, to figure out what I wanted to do. On the 4th day, Sophie showed up at my door. I tried to close it in her face, but she wedged her foot in the gap. "You have to listen to me," she begged. "I'll tell you everything. The whole truth. Just please, give me 5 minutes." Against my better judgment, I let her in. We sat in the living room, the same room where this nightmare had started months ago with her wearing the ring. "Tell me," I said flatly. "All of it." Sophie took a shaky breath. I was in debt from gambling. $20,000 to people who don't accept excuses. They were threatening me, saying they'd hurt me if I didn't pay. I'd already taken everything I could from Mom's accounts, but it wasn't enough. "So you stole her medication." I knew someone who bought prescription pills. He said morphine was worth a lot on the street. Mom had bottles of it, and I thought. I thought if I took some and replaced them with over-the-counter sleeping pills, no one would notice. The bottles looked similar. I just switched the labels. But she noticed, I said quietly. She was in pain. Sophie nodded, tears streaming down her face. She told the nurses her medication wasn't working anymore. They thought she'd built up a tolerance. They tried increasing the doses, but she choked on a sob. It wasn't the real medication, so nothing helped. And I just stood there, watching her suffer, too afraid to admit what I'd done. The room suddenly grew cold. The lights flickered once, twice. And then I heard it, we both heard it. Mom's voice, echoing through the room as if she were standing right beside us. Tell her the truth, Sophie. All of it. Don't hold back now. Sophie looked around wildly, her hand instinctively going to her scarred finger. She's here. Mom's here. Then finish it, I demanded, my voice breaking. What else is there? Sophie's whole body was shaking. The night she died. I was alone with her. You'd gone home to rest, and Daniel was picking up her prescription. She woke up and looked at me. Really looked at me. And she knew. Knew what? She knew what I'd done. She grabbed my hand, she was so weak, but she held on so tight, and she said, Sophie, what have you done? And I broke. I confessed everything. The stealing, the gambling, the medication. All of it. I felt tears sliding down my own cheeks. What did she say? She cried. She actually cried, even though she was in so much pain. She said she forgave me, but that I had to make it right. She made me promise to tell you and Daniel the truth, no matter how hard it was. She said she was putting the truth into her ring, and that it would find its way to the surface eventually. And then? And then she closed her eyes and, she was gone. Within an hour. I think she just gave up. Knowing what I'd done to her, the betrayal, it broke something in her. I killed her. Not just physically, but her spirit. I killed my own mother. The confession hung in the air between us, heavy and suffocating. As Sophie finished speaking, something extraordinary happened. The ring, Mom's ring, which I'd been wearing on a chain around my neck since Sophie had finally been freed from it, grew warm against my chest. I pulled it out and held it in my palm. It was glowing softly, that same golden light, but this time it felt different. Not angry or accusatory. Almost peaceful. Sophie stared at it, then at me. I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't deserve it. But I've told you everything now. Every lie, every theft, every terrible thing I did. The truth is finally out. As if responding to her words, the ring pulsed once, brightly, and then the glow faded completely. The light disappeared, and it was just a ring again, beautiful, but ordinary. Sophie slumped forward, sobbing uncontrollably. I sat frozen, the ring cool now in my hand, processing everything I'd heard. My sister had caused our mother unimaginable suffering in her final days. She'd stolen from her, lied to her, and indirectly hastened her death. But she'd also finally told the complete truth. I looked down at the ring, and in that moment, I swear I felt Mom's presence. Not scary or vengeful like Sophie had experienced, but warm and loving, the way she'd always been with us when we were young. The ring began to move in my palm. Not violently, it simply rolled gently across my hand and dropped to the floor. It rolled across the carpet and stopped at Sophie's feet, spinning once before settling flat. We both stared at it in silence. I picked up the ring slowly, feeling its weight in my hand. It felt lighter somehow, as if a burden had been lifted from it too. What does it mean? Sophie whispered, looking at the ring with a mixture of fear and wonder. I thought about Mom's letter, about what she'd written. Truth restores peace. The ring had forced Sophie to confront every lie, every betrayal, until there was nothing left to hide. And now, with everything finally revealed, the ring had released its hold. I think, I said carefully, that Mom's forgiven you. The ring has done what it needed to do. Sophie shook her head violently. But I don't deserve forgiveness. Not after what I did to her. Maybe that's not for you to decide. I heard Mom's voice again, so faint it might have been my imagination, whispering words I'd read in her letter. Peace comes when you forgive what truth reveals. I looked at my sister, broken, remorseful, finally honest after months of lies. Part of me wanted to hate her, to turn her into the authorities, to make her pay for what she'd done. But another part, the part that sounded like Mom, understood that Sophie had already been paying. The guilt had been eating her alive from the inside. You need help, I told her firmly. Real help. Therapy, probably rehab for the gambling addiction. And you need to make amends somehow, even if Mom isn't here to receive them. Sophie nodded through her tears. I'll do anything. I'll spend the rest of my life trying to make this right. Good. Because that's exactly what you're going to do. The next morning, Sophie was gone. She'd left a note on the kitchen counter saying she'd checked herself into a treatment facility upstate. She'd be there for at least 3 months, working through her addictions and trauma. Daniel found me sitting at the kitchen table, staring at the note. Is she coming back? I don't know, I admitted. But at least she's finally trying to face what she's done. I slid the ring onto my finger for the first time since Mom had died. It fit perfectly, as if it had been waiting for this moment. There was no glow, no burn, no curse. Just a beautiful ring carrying generations of family history. And secrets that had finally been brought into the light. 3 weeks passed before I found it, another letter from Mom, this one tucked inside her old Bible on a shelf I'd been avoiding cleaning. The envelope had Sophie's name written on it in Mom's handwriting. My first instinct was to throw it away, to let Sophie suffer without whatever final words Mom had left for her. But that felt petty and cruel, and I knew Mom wouldn't have wanted that. I called the treatment center and asked them to give Sophie the letter. They agreed but said she'd need to open it with her therapist present. A week later, Sophie called me for the first time since she'd left. Her voice sounded different, steadier, more grounded. I read Mom's letter, she said quietly. What did it say? It said, my love will follow you, Sophie, but so will your truth. You cannot run from either. Face what you've done, and you'll find that forgiveness isn't something you earn, it's something you learn to accept. Sophie paused, and I heard her take a shaky breath. She knew, Natalie. Even before the ring, before that last night, she knew something was wrong with me. And she still loved me. I felt tears prick my eyes. That was so like Mom, seeing the worst in people and loving them anyway. She loved both of us, I said softly. She just wanted us to be better than we were. I'm trying, Sophie said. It's hard, and some days I want to run away again. But I'm trying. 2 months later, a postcard arrived with a photo of mountains on the front. The back read simply, still here. Still trying. The scar reminds me every day of what I almost lost, and what I'm fighting to become. I taped it to my refrigerator, a reminder that healing isn't quick or easy, but it's possible. 4 months after Sophie left for treatment, I received a call from Mrs. Holloway, Mom's attorney. She needed to see me urgently about the estate. In her office, she pulled out another document. I apologize for not catching this sooner, but there was an addendum to your mother's will, filed just a week before she passed. It specifically addresses Sophie's inheritance. My stomach tightened. What does it say? Mrs. Holloway adjusted her glasses and read, in the event that my daughter Sophie proves herself unable to handle responsibility and trust, her portion of the inheritance shall be held by her sister Natalie until such time as Sophie demonstrates genuine change and redemption. This includes her share of the house, savings, and personal items. Natalie will be the sole judge of when Sophie is ready. I sat back, stunned. Mom knew. She knew what Sophie was doing and planned for it. It appears so. She was quite clear in her instructions. She wanted to give Sophie a chance to change, but not enable her destructive behavior. Mrs. Holloway folded the document. So the question is, what do you want to do with Sophie's inheritance? I thought about the phone calls I'd been having with Sophie, the progress reports from her therapists, the postcard on my refrigerator. She was trying. Really trying. But was she ready? Hold it for now, I decided. When she's completed treatment and shown she can maintain sobriety and honesty for a significant period, we'll revisit this. Mrs. Holloway nodded approvingly. That seems wise. Your mother would be proud. I left the office with mixed feelings. Part of me wondered if I could ever truly trust Sophie again after what she'd done. The ring had forced the truth out, but did that mean Sophie had really changed, or just that she'd been caught? Time would tell. My wedding day arrived in late September, 6 months after Daniel's proposal. We chose a small ceremony in the same botanical gardens where he'd proposed, surrounded by autumn flowers and crisp golden light. I wore Mom's ring on my right hand. It didn't feel right to replace my engagement ring, but I wanted her there with me somehow. As I got ready, Beatrice helped me with my dress and smiled at the ring. She's watching, Beatrice said simply. She's so proud of you. The ceremony was simple and beautiful. Daniel's vows made me cry, and mine made him laugh, exactly as we'd planned. Our small group of family and friends celebrated with us, and for the first time since Mom's death, joy felt uncomplicated. Then, as we were taking photos after the ceremony, I saw her. Sophie stood at the edge of the garden, partially hidden behind a tree. She looked healthier than I'd seen her in years, her face fuller, her eyes clearer. She wore a simple blue dress and carried a small gift bag. I excused myself from the photographer and walked over to her. Daniel followed, protective but trusting my judgment. Hi, Sophie said softly. I know I wasn't invited. I don't blame you. But I couldn't miss your wedding entirely. I just wanted to see you happy, and then I'll go. You came all the way from treatment? I'm out now. 2 weeks ago. I'm living in a sober house, attending meetings, working with a sponsor. She held out the gift bag. This is for you. I made it in art therapy. Inside was a watercolor painting of Mom, smiling in her garden. It wasn't perfect, but it was beautiful in its honesty. Sophie had captured something essential about Mom, her warmth, her strength. Can I see the ring? Sophie asked hesitantly. Just one last time. I promise I won't touch it. I held out my hand, and Sophie looked at the ring with an expression I couldn't quite read, regret, acceptance, peace, all mixed together. I'm glad it's with you, she said. That's where it belongs. Then she surprised me by asking, would you mind if I stayed? Just for the reception? I won't cause any problems. I'd like to celebrate with you, if you'll let me. I looked at Daniel, who squeezed my hand supportively, leaving the decision to me. You can stay, I said, surprising myself with how much I meant it. Sophie's eyes filled with tears. Thank you. The reception was small, held in the garden's glass conservatory. Sophie sat at the back, keeping to herself mostly, but I noticed her talking quietly with Beatrice at one point. Later, she helped clean up fallen napkins and refilled water glasses without being asked, small gestures that meant more than grand apologies. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows through the glass, Sophie approached me one final time. Can I talk to you? Just for a minute? We stepped outside into the cooling evening air. Sophie took a deep breath, and I saw her fingers unconsciously move to the scar on her ring finger, a gesture I'd noticed she did when she was nervous or thinking deeply. I've been working with my therapist on making amends, she began. Not just saying sorry, but actually making things right. I can't bring Mom back or undo the pain I caused her. But I've set up a fund in her name, for cancer patients who can't afford their pain medication. It's small now, just what I can contribute from my part-time job, but I'm committed to it. I felt my throat tighten with unexpected emotion. And I wanted you to know, Sophie continued, her voice steady despite the tears streaming down her face, that I understand if you never fully forgive me. I've accepted that some things can't be fixed, only lived with. But I'm going to spend the rest of my life trying to be someone Mom could have been proud of. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small box. I wanted to give you this. Please, just take it. Inside was Mom's gold bracelet, the one Sophie had pawned months ago. How did you? I worked extra shifts for 3 months to get enough money to buy it back. The pawn shop still had it. I know it doesn't erase what I did, but... I pulled her into a hug before she could finish. She stiffened in surprise, then wrapped her arms around me and sobbed into my shoulder. We'll get through this, I whispered. It won't be easy, and it won't be quick. But we'll get through it. When we pulled apart, Sophie asked tentatively, "Can I see you put the ring on?" Just once? I didn't understand what she meant until she clarified, "Mom's ring. Can I see it on your hand, where it belongs?" I held up my right hand, the ring catching the last rays of sunlight. And then something remarkable happened. Sophie smiled, a genuine, peaceful smile, and as she did, I noticed something. The faint glow I'd learned to associate with lies and deception was completely absent. There was just my sister, flawed and broken and healing, but finally honest. Sophie reached out and gently touched the ring, just a brief contact with one fingertip. Nothing happened. No burn, no glow, no curse. The ring accepted her touch because she was finally accepting her truth. "Thank you for letting me be here," Sophie said. "For your wedding, I mean. It means everything." For the first time in months, when I looked at Sophie, I didn't see the person who'd betrayed our mother. I saw my sister, the girl who used to braid my hair before school, who'd helped me practice for my driving test, who'd held my hand at Mom's funeral. She was still in there, underneath all the mistakes and the pain. And maybe, just maybe, she was finally finding her way back. A week after the wedding, I visited Mom's grave for the first time in months. The small cemetery was peaceful, with old oak trees providing shade over the neat rows of headstones. I knelt beside her marker, tracing the letters of her name with my fingers. "Hi, Mom. I'm sorry it took me so long to visit." The breeze picked up, rustling through the leaves above me, and I imagined it was her way of saying she understood. "Sophie's trying," I told her, as if she didn't already know. "She's really trying this time. I think she's going to make it. And I'm trying too. Trying to forgive, trying to understand. It's hard, but you knew it would be, didn't you? That's why you left us the ring." I looked down at my hand, where the ring sparkled in the afternoon sunlight. As I watched, the light hit it at just the right angle, and the refracted rays cast a perfect heart-shaped shadow on the grass beside Mom's headstone. My breath caught. It was so clearly deliberate, so impossibly perfect, that I couldn't dismiss it as coincidence. "I get it now," I whispered. The ring wasn't about punishment. It was about truth. About forcing us to face what we'd been hiding from each other and ourselves. Sophie had to face what she'd done. And I had to face whether I could forgive her. A figure appeared at the edge of the cemetery. "Sophie." She walked slowly toward me, carrying a bouquet of sunflowers, Mom's favorite. "I hope it's okay that I came," she said quietly. I wanted to visit her too. I stood and moved aside, making room for her beside the grave. Together, we knelt there, two sisters bound by love and pain and the slow, difficult work of healing. Sophie placed the sunflowers on the grave, and her hand brushed against mine. I noticed her scar had faded significantly, though it would likely never disappear completely. A permanent reminder of the price of lies and the value of truth. "Do you think she'd forgive me?" Sophie asked, her voice barely audible. I thought about Mom's letters, about the ring's purpose, about everything that had happened. "I think she already did. Before she even died. The ring wasn't her way of cursing you, Sophie. It was her way of saving you." We sat in silence for a while, the sunlight warm on our backs. As I prepared to leave, I glanced back at Mom's grave one more time. The heart-shaped shadow from the ring was still there, steady and clear. Sophie noticed it too. She smiled through her tears, and for just a moment, I could have sworn I felt Mom there with us, not as a ghost or a curse, but as the loving presence she'd always been, guiding us toward truth even when it hurt. As we walked away together, I realized that Mom's ring had done exactly what it was meant to do. It hadn't torn our family apart, we'd done that ourselves with our lies and secrets. The ring had simply refused to let us stay broken. It had forced us into the light, into honesty, into the painful but necessary work of becoming whole again. I touched the ring gently, feeling its familiar weight on my finger. "Thank you, Mom," I whispered into the breeze. Behind me, I heard Sophie whisper the same words. And somewhere, I knew Mom was smiling. Mom's ring never punished us, it just made sure the truth was finally warned at the end.